I think that mental health workers have a lot of challenges that they face, and stuff that we don't really know about. There are a lot of people who have gone through terrible things that these workers have to help them with, and that can be really hard on them.
The trauma that we experienced as a school with the suicide and the death of Dr. Gruters and things like that have been really challenging.
Do you think that more counselors and teachers and mental health professionals need to see their own mental health professionals?
As far as like people seeing their own mental health professionals, I think it's very encouraged. There's still a stigma involved even as a counselor of like having to see a counselor. But I figured when I was struggling with Dr. Gruters' death, like if I tell students to go in and talk to somebody sometimes, like maybe I need to take my own advice sometimes too. Yeah. We're a tough group of people and we think we're fine and we can just get through things, and but we're the same as everyone else. We're human.
We always joke in here about how there's kids we want to take home sometimes, and you can't, but it wears you down, but at the same time, we can only do as much as we can do while we have them.
Compassion fatigue has to do with being afraid. Compassion fatigue begins to change your hardwiring, change who you are.
Some days get really crazy, and I get home and I'm like, holy moly, like that was a lot of different things from whether it's suicide threats or Fs or a student is sad because they got broken up with, or I mean, there's all kinds of different things that we deal with in a day, which I kind of love because every day is different. But sometimes I get home and it's just like, I am so tired. But we do a really great job as a department. I'm really lucky to work with Mr. Grunig and Mrs. Steiner and Mrs. Haugen and Mrs. Eifersbach and Eva. We support each other as a team.
When I was in high school, I didn't feel like there was anyone helping me figure anything out, especially as far as like college. I was a kid that really had no clue what they wanted to be, but was told I had to go to college, and that was frustrating. So just knowing that I could be there a little bit to help with those things, and then not even realizing that there was actually a counselor to talk to about personal stuff too, which would have been helpful back then. So it kind of made me want to be able to be there and have an impact.
I think with everything you do, you're not
Counseling
exactly
programs are really good at training you to be a counselor.
With your learning.
They don't exactly train you to be a school counselor.
Do you wish you would have been specifically trained for teaching students about psych issues?
Absolutely.
Every day is different, so I mean, I can have anything from a really upset student to a student who's trying to fill out scholarships to, classroom guidance, meetings.
What is your opinion on mental health workers? What kind of things do they go through, do you think?
Well, I think there's probably different roles. There's people that are hired by the counties. I'm sure there's national, federal employees, county, villages, cities. So there's different employees, but...
How do you think, at the end of the day, say a psychiatrist or psychologist or a counselor or something, how do you think they feel at the end of the day after dealing with a bunch of people?
Well, I'm sure it's draining, just like any job. It takes its toll. For example, I'm a Catholic Christian, so we have this what's called the Sacrament of Reconciliation, Sacrament of Penance, Sacrament of Confession. So when people go to the priest, tell them all their dirty laundry and stuff, you hear that from 20 different people. I'm sure the priest doesn't, it takes its toll. There is some parallel to that for a mental health worker, hearing about all the brokenness of the world. It takes its toll, but I'm sure there's fulfilling aspects of it too. I mean, you're helping your neighbors.
Okay, and then one more question. I think that's good. Okay, I think that's good.
Okay.
Thank you. So, what kind of things do you think mental health workers go through like daily? Like, yeah.
Well, I'm a teacher, so I kind of see an aspect of that in my learning support teachers and our counselors. They deal with a lot of mental health issues all the time. So I think it's very taxing. I think there's a lot of dealing with family members in the community as a whole, dealing with law enforcement. I think there's a lot of different things that they have to deal with and think about. From what I've seen, they are always developing a plan A and then a plan B and a plan C to work with our kids, anyways, our students. Mental health workers, it's like, to me, it seems like a blanket term. I don't know. Like when you think mental health workers, what are you specifically thinking of? Like a certain vein?
Not necessarily. I think we're being more on the side of, at this point, counselors, but also like psychologists and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I think it'd be a really tough job. Really tough, yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
How does hearing the hardships of your students affect you? Going off of what you said about your family, is it difficult to separate your work life from your home life?
Occasionally, depending on the day, but it's more just when I get home, instead of dealing with family, I just want to take a nap. So it's not exactly hard to keep them separate, and having a little 2-year-old sometimes is a great distraction, actually.
Is it hard to deal with your own issues at the same time as your students' issues?
I don't really know. I mean, school is school, and you take your classes, and you think you know things, and you study, and you do your presentations, and you take your exams, but actually working with students in real life situations, I don't know if there's anything that can prepare you for that. When they get emotional, sometimes I get emotional too. And not because like I'm feeling sorry for them or whatever, but it is hard to see someone that you care about struggling and to know that you can't just fix it. And so I get frustrated when they feel frustration. I feel sad when they feel sad, but I also sometimes feel like, what, you're not doing anything to make it better. What are you doing? And so there's a lot of emotions, and I think that's part of the job. You try to be objective and you try to be realistic, but I think part of the reason that I do love my job so much is because it is more than a job for me. Like, these are like students' lives. Like, this is, good, the bad, and the ugly. That is like real world, and this is like not just like a hypothetical situation. Like, this is day-to-day like life. Mm-hmm. And I feel really like special to be a part of that for a lot of kids. It was a challenge for my first couple years, was not taking things home with me, and not letting things like ruin my day if someone else was having a bad day. But again, I think that's part of being a helper and having that empathy, is that we are like feelers, and we do get impacted by other people's emotions. I have gotten better at managing that, but there are definitely still times that like I will go home at the end of the day and like literally cry because my heart is just broken for some situation or something. You know, a lot of times I was like, I just wish I could like take these kids home, or I wish I could just fix this or whatever. And I can't, but I try to, like, when I am at school, be like a positive person for them and be like a little beacon of hope, or, you know, to try to do what I can with what I have. You know, I can't like fix things always, but sometimes just knowing that somebody cares, you know, is better than nothing, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it can be really hard. I've tried to come up with ways to like disconnect a little bit, but still care. Like that it's okay to ask for help. Like we learned a lot of that when I was in graduate school, was that you're not going to know everything yourself, and you shouldn't, and you should have a team, and you should have support, and you should have people that you can like bounce things off of, because it's really hard to do it all by yourself. So like if something weird happens, or we're feeling really emotional about something, or something, you know, whatever, we're able to talk to each other about it and like help each other get through situations, which is so awesome. Like that we have that team, and sometimes it's venting, but sometimes it's problem solving, and sometimes it's just like literally like I will go in Mrs. Steiner's office with like tears in my eyes and be like, I don't know what to do with this, and I just need help. And like I'm so grateful that we have that.
Yeah, that's
for
so
each
nice
other.
that you have each other.
Yes.
I totally agree. Do you think there are any disadvantages of being an educator over a psychologist?
I guess there's anything you pick, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages. I guess one of my disadvantages would be sometimes you wish you could do more. As a trained psychologist, you can help people at a much different level than you can as a teacher. Clinical psychologists as teachers of psychology. So you've got to be really careful with that piece.
Yeah. So did you have any like special training that just psych teachers go through?
Yeah, I went through kind of the standard social studies degree at NDSU, and I took the track that had psych in it, obviously. And then I had a special training because I teach AP Psych, and so it was a 1-week training at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, that I had over last summer, and meeting with some other teachers of AP Psych, and somebody who kind of wrote the book on teaching AP Psych, he led it. And so that 5-day training was what really got me prepared for AP Psych specifically. But other than that, it was that track in my social studies degree.
Okay.
One of the things when I look at my training, I always wish I had more, and I always want to get more. It's just finding the way to do that, where I'm not gone from school all the time or paying a lot of money to do it or that type of thing. But I consider myself a lifelong learner, and so I always want to know more. It's just finding out the best way to do it and finding the best things that I can bring back to the classroom too.
So now they want me to ask you about the certificate over there.
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about that?
So this certificate, QPR Gatekeeper Certificate, you should see that around, I would say, most teachers, either offices or classrooms around the building. It was an expectation that all teachers in the building go through that training, and it was a training to kind of just get a little bit more familiar with suicide and suicide awareness, and things to look for, how you can help when you can't help, kind of what the proper progression is and the steps and what to do. And so with that, I'm glad I had the training. That was eye-opening for me. Even with the psych background, I still learn things from any of those additional trainings. I think as a teacher, though, you always want to know more too. And so anytime we have a training like that, it leaves me with more questions and hope for more trainings to answer more questions.
So do you think that that adequately prepared you for the things that you face daily here?
In some ways, yes. It adequately, I guess I know the proper way to go about helping someone that I see might need help. But I'd always like to know more.
Yeah.
So adequate, yes. Would I like more? Yes.
Yeah. So do you think that it, like, I don't know how to phrase this question because we didn't write it down.
Yeah, that's
but
okay.
The things that you face every day at school, like, do you refer to that a lot, that training that you had?
That compassion
always in the
fatigue
back
can
of your
be
mind.
identified,
I
arrested,
guess,
and treated
and some
at
things are
any
kind of instinct,
time.
too,
That you
go with,
can
and,
begin
I wouldn't
this
say
journey
was the
for
only type of training I
post-traumatic
had like that.
growth.
When you're learning to be a
That you
teacher,
can
there's
be better
all
after
kinds
trauma
of things that they're
than
throwing
you
your way.
ever
It's so
were
much more than just the
before.
content. And so that training couples with a lot of other trainings and preparation items that I've done too. So I would say it's always kind of in the back of your mind because they're very real issues for students.
Yeah, definitely. Do you feel like psychology class gives students a realistic view of clinical psychology?
Oh, that's a good question. So when I look at our psych class,
Let's play a little
think
game.
our psych
We'll
class
play a
gives you
word
good view of
association game.
kind of all of the
I'll say a
different
word
areas
and
of
you can
psych.
picture something in your head. You can even shout it out loud. Are you ready? Cow. Okay, so most of you maybe were thinking this. Maybe a few of you were thinking more this. And maybe some of you thought this. We'll do another one, work. Awesome, so some of you really love your work, like this. Maybe a few of you were thinking this. And I wonder if anyone felt this. We'll do just one more. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. So most of you thought this. Maybe a few of you were thinking this. But I wonder if anyone thought this. Compassion fatigue is the post-traumatic stress disorder related symptoms that you receive vicariously as a secondary target to trauma. Compassion fatigue is experienced by those in a helping profession. Doctors, nurses, counselors, therapists, police officers, and maybe even you. If your unpaid role is that of a helping professional, then you may also be affected by compassion fatigue. If you are the middle of the night phone answerer or helping a friend through addiction or anxiety, if you are raising children or caring for parents or maybe both at the same time, if your unpaid role is that of a helping profession, compassion fatigue could be affecting you as well. Now, what puts you at a greater risk for compassion fatigue is empathy. Those generally in a helping profession have a very strong empathetic response system. And empathy is that ability to pick yourself up and put yourself in someone else's shoes and get it. really get where they're coming from. The problem with empathy is you don't get to decide when to jump out. And those traumas that they experience begin to change you. I remember when I was the supervisor of a therapeutic group home, and I was sitting down with one of my clients. She began to tell me the horrific and painful stories of her past. And as she laid out in detail what she had experienced, my cell phone began to vibrate. And I wanted to show her that I was listening and I cared about every word she said, so I picked it up and I silenced it and I put it back down and I continued to listen. From that day forward, every single time I picked up my cell phone, swiped to silence it, I was transported back to her trauma. My brain had created a PTSD-related symptom that transported me back to her situation every single time for years. Now, this would be pretty normal if it happened that day after work at the grocery store, or maybe even a week or 2 weeks later. But where we get concerned that maybe this trauma is starting to change you is when it's sticking around for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and maybe even longer. Now, for many years, compassion fatigue was confused. People called everything burnout until Dr. Charles Figley came around in the late 80s and 90s and began to do research. We called it burnout, but the truth is there's a significant difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. Burnout has to do with being worn out and tired and just flat out not liking your job anymore. We see this a lot in child protective service workers. They start to become overly vigilant, believing that everyone is out to hurt them and their family. When I think of this, I can't help but think of the nurse who came after one of my classes and said, still to this day, she can see the broken bones of the young man who was abused by his parents. That still today, she knows the smell of death from a patient who laid in bed dying. These memories, they do not just go away, and they begin to change you. But we like to make excuses because we think we're superhuman. So we say things like, I'm fine. I'm a professional. I can deal with the stress. In fact, it doesn't even stress me out. My famous talk off was, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know most people think it's stressful, but I'm okay. The problem with that is when stress and trauma start to affect you, your brain and your body, they do not pull for your opinion. And they will start to show signs and symptoms because your body and your brain are shouting at you, I am not okay. I cannot handle the trauma. In little ways, whether you start to have sleep problems, either you're sleeping all the time or not able to sleep at all. Another way it manifests is becoming a workaholic. Now, I know plenty of you in this room think, Amy, there's nothing wrong with being a workaholic. Get off my toes. Let me tell you why it may be a problem. Because when we start to feel like we are losing control of the world around us, what we do is we roll up our sleeves and we work a little harder. And I can work hard enough to make this trauma go away. Another sign and symptom is feeling unappreciated and under-resourced, like what you have is not enough to get the job done. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. There's a very good chance you are indeed underappreciated. But when you started in this helping profession, or when you started helping your friend or your family member, did you know you were going to be underappreciated, but you said, it's okay. I want to do this anyway. It's okay. I love you enough. But then somewhere along the way, that is no longer okay with me. It is no longer okay that I am not thanked and that I don't have what I need to succeed. What that tells me is your circumstances, they didn't change. You did. Maybe you changed because of life. Maybe you changed because of maturity, but maybe you changed because of compassion fatigue. And the last symptom I want to talk with you about today is called self-entitlement. And self-entitlement is a justification of negative maladaptive behaviors because of the positive things you do. The best way I can picture putting this is most of us went to school and got a degree or a certification to be professionals at what we do. But the truth is, I'll let you in on a secret, that's not enough because we're overachievers. So we require little invisible badges to really be professionals. Let me tell you what these invisible badges look like. For social workers, I know it looks like this. I stayed up all night long helping Joe Smith at the hospital. Now I'm a real social worker. For some healthcare professionals, I know it looks like this. I worked 2 shifts in a row. Now I'm a real healthcare professional. Where this turns into self-entitlement is when it looks like this. I stayed up all night helping Joe Smith at the hospital. That's why I'm a little cranky today and biting everyone's heads off. I worked 2 shifts in a row. In fact, I worked 60 hours this week, so I'm getting wasted all weekend. We begin to justify the negative behaviors because of the positive things that we do. Now that I have thoroughly depressed you, I want to give you some good news. And the best way I can think of putting this is when you think of an airplane, you know that the stewardess tells you where those exits are, and then they begin to tell you to please put your mask on you first before assisting other people. Now, every time I travel for vacation with my family, I show the stewardess that I'm listening. I get the cue card out of the backseat pocket, and I give eye contact. I'm almost the only person on the plane listening. And I show if the plane went down, I could save the plane. I'm real intense about it. And yet it never fails. Every time they finish, they come over to me, and they say, "Excuse me, if there were a change in cabin pressure, what would you do?" And I'm a little offended. I don't know why they asked me that. But you see, that flight attendant, they see something you don't. They see the carry-ons that I travel with. They see this. They do see me, and they see this. You see, that flight attendant knows that no matter how much I listen to her, that I will put their masks on them first before caring for myself. But you see, she also knows that no matter how much of a supermom I believe I am, that I cannot live without oxygen. And yet every single day we do the same thing. I put your mask on you, and your mask on you, and your mask on you. And I don't care for myself. But you see, we can only give what we have. We give out of who we are. And if I don't care for myself, I certainly cannot care for you. So I'm going to ask you to complete a piece of homework for me. And I'm going to ask that you please do this every single day for the rest of your life. I have big expectations. I'm going to ask that you take 10 minutes just for you. 10 minutes to put your mask on you first. 10 minutes to pray or meditate, to exercise or take a walk. But 10 minutes to care for you first. Take 10.